A signboard outside announced free admission. On a whim, I stepped inside and came upon a glass case displaying a Confederate battle ensign. My immediate reaction was that this was strange and ahistorical. As an archaeologist, I had been trained to look at artifacts in their context, and it struck me that the ensign was obviously out of place, like a European stone tool in an African cave, or a Neolithic carving in a Paleolithic sediment. I had to know more. I learned that in August 1863, midway through its world cruise, the Confederate commercial raider Alabama sailed into Table Bay and captured an American merchant ship, the Sea Bride, in full view of the entire city. The British population of the Cape of Good Hope was quite sympathetic to the Confederate cause, and in one of the numerous parties and celebrations in which the Alabama's captain, Raphael Semmes, was welcomed, he presented the battle ensign to a local ship chandler, and the ensign eventually found its way into the South African national collections. While relatively few people in the United States, other than Civil War naval enthusiasts, have learned about the Alabama, it has remained famous in South Africa. It even entered folklore in an Afrikaans folk song, Daar Kom die Alabama, much loved by both the white Afrikaners and the Cape-colored population. There was something poignant about this, that a distant community on another continent would, for 150 years, musically enshrine the memory of a vessel that connected it to U.S. history, while America itself mainly forgot about it. Only a fraction of what I subsequently learned about the Alabama concerned South Africa, but my 16 years there from 1985 to 2001, during which I witnessed the transition from apartheid to democracy, shaped my interest and approach to the historical record, especially the memoirs of the Alabama's officers. Nobody could live in South Africa during the transition from apartheid to democracy and not take note of the profound intellectual, social, and institutional changes that accompanied the political revolution. Many Americans who lived in and visited South Africa in the post-apartheid years understood that the country was a crucible in which attention to systemic racism, relatively diffused in the American consciousness at the time, was concentrated and intensified. And the reason was obvious. Racism was a blight that affected the majority, not the minority. And now there was a democracy. Collectively, these changes became known as transformation, a term that connotes meaningful change as a corrective to structural racism. In the South African context, transformation included adopting a human rights-based constitution, corporate South Africa steadily engaging with black economic empowerment, and the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, JSE, becoming the first in the world to launch a social responsibility index. A key feature of the early transformational period was the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, TRC, co-chaired by Archbishop Desmond Tutu, which sought to disclose the country's fraught apartheid past and provide accountability. This is not to say that the South Africa of today has achieved the dreams and expectations of the immediate transformational era. On my return to the United States in 2001, I noticed that racism, always central to an understanding of American history, was, at the time, relatively peripheral to the American conversation. In the era before Black Lives Matter, with the possible exception of the civil rights period of the 1960s, voting rights in America had to compete with many other events and narratives, notably 9/11 and the subsequent wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. In my experience of late 20th century South Africa, on the other hand, racism was not one subject of conversation among many. In many ways, it was the only subject. To be sure, powerful voices in the American black community and in the political and cultural spheres have long demanded attention to historical and current injustices, and a recent generation of historians has deeply interrogated the tragic history of American racism. The black experience has also increasingly been explored and celebrated in both the scholarly and popular realms for some 30 years now, and South African and American scholars and public intellectuals